just don't feel very well.
Okay, so what we're going to do here, or at least what I'm going to do right off the bat, I'm going to put a 1-inch border on here for a couple of reasons, or almost a 1 inch. On the sides that I can put a 1-inch border, I'll put a 1-inch border. Otherwise, I'll just parallel this sucker to the best of my ability. I'm going to use that edge for checking my colors. Now, as we said before, painting watercolor onto drawing paper is possible. It's just not really easy because this paper tends to act like a sponge. So you have to do several different things, and you have to have a bunch of patience. Now, I am working with what I believe, since there's no label on it, is Crayola watercolors. And I'm trying to do this to show you that, yeah, you can get some okay effects out of watercolors that are this cheap. Would I like to use better watercolors? Yes. Would I like to use watercolor paper? Yes. Do most of you guys have those things? No. So, we're going to work with what we got and see what we can get. Alright, now, I don't know if you guys can see that. That's me cleaning off my mixing area with a slightly damp paper towel. Watercolor is always active. So if you left some color behind and you went to mix something, your color would change. See that little dirt there? That would change my color. So I'm going to grab my whole cadre of brushes. Really, for flat areas, I like that. I like this if I'm going to paint something flat and even. Otherwise, I'm almost constantly using rounds. And rounds are all about, you know, pressure and all that good stuff. Now you should have a glass of water for your mixing and your moisture, and you should have a couple of paper towels to clean off the brush, clean up any spills, all that good stuff. Now, as I'm looking at the actual photo, his photo is incredibly pink. So normally when I go to make a skin tone, I put down some water. I usually grab some orange. I mix that in with the water. And to make it not look like it's a fake tanner, Kim Kardashian or Donald Trump, I will put a molecule of blue in it to cut that orangeness so that they look normal and healthy. These paints are pretty dirty. I may not need that molecule of blue. So I'm going to take a little swab here on the side of the paper and check that next to the skin tone, and in all honesty, that is too orange. So I'm going to add a little more water to it, just by whatever's in the brush. And now I'm going to grab a little bit of red, and I'm going to mix that in with that orange, because he tends to be more pink, at least in this photo, than anything else. Is he that pink in real life? I don't know. I'm pretty pink in real life, to be honest. I don't tan well. That was more orangey. I might actually have to put some more orange in here. Maybe I need more water. A little more water. And more water. Put that next to there. Now you notice I'm wiping off the greater extent of my color. Alright? And that color is pretty light right now. In fact, that's probably too light for his actual skin tone. But that's okay. The beauty about watercolors is if you start light, you can build on top of your colors. So I am going to go with what I got here, because I got a lot of it. And I'm going to try to move quickly. And part of the reason I'm moving quickly is because watercolor dries fast. There's that. And also because watercolor, even though you can be meticulous with it, it is as close to drawing or sketching as about anybody can get. So I'm just going to take and kind of blend this, trying to make it even. All right, I'm going to get here to the bottom of his lip. I'm going to start up on the other side. Boom, 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 boom. And the thing also about working quickly is when you move away from the areas that you were in, you give them a chance to dry up. So if you got to come back in a few minutes and add another color over the top of it, you can add another color over the top without risking damage. Now I'm even going to paint in his shadow areas just because I can always put a gray or a gray wash over the top of that. So I'm really just kind of going to go in here. The only thing I'm going to be worried about not painting over or anything that would register as white. Because anything that's going to register as white, and they do have white watercolors, but watercolors, as we said before, are transparent. So once you try to put white over something, you're always going to get that color that's underneath. Yeah, some watercolor artists are lazy and they will put acrylic white over the top of things. And so right now he looks like this creepy little pink gnome, which is to be expected. I'm actually going to bring a little more water to this mixture because I feel like my pink is getting too pink. So now here's the problem. This whole thing is wet and it needs multiple layers, but I gotta wait till it dries. So I'm going to take a look at my guy here. I'm actually even going to take a quick look at the picture I drew from it. And I'm not really getting a sense that I implied a shadow direction. So he must be kind of lit from above. But I'm gonna imply a shadow direction here. So I'm gonna clean my brush once again and put it down here. I'm gonna stir into my black, and you'll see right here that I have a nice watery, it almost looks like a brown black, so there must have been a little more red left in there. I'm gonna check that on the side. Okay, not horrible. Want to make it a little lighter though. Okay. Alright, and what I'll do is I'll start to put some gray to his head to make his head look a little more 3D. So I'll take a line like that. I'll clean off nothing but water. And then I'll just blend this. Alright, so we got a nice subtle shadow going up there. I'm going to take a little more gray. I'm going to do the same thing with the top of his helmet or his mask or whatever the heck this is, his hoodie. Alright. I'm going to take all the water out of that brush almost. Come back because I can see that one a little too wet on that one. And I start to fade that. Sad thing is I'm working with oil paints in the other room and I'm realizing how much I miss watercolors. So I'm starting to round out his head. That's good. Make a little more of this gray black. I'll check it on the side. Alright, still got too much on my brush. I'm going to do this side of his head, of his ear. Now, if you get in a situation like this where you're like, oh crap, I just clumped something, just lift it before it dries, and then you can blend the water and blend it down. All right. Now, there's certain things I'm starting to see in there. I don't know if you can see them in this camera, but I am starting to see little dots. That means I've hit a spot of oversaturation. So I got to really just back away from that for a little bit. Whereas I can still kind of go back in these because they're not super saturated yet. And I can darken up these values a little more. All right. And I can get just this damp brush. And go like that. Okay, now I think the majority of his pigment is dry here. I'm going to try an orange wash over this. And that's kind of hitting out into left field. But I do notice a little bit of actual yellow in that pink. So I'll check this on the edge. Okay, that wouldn't be a bad shadow color. So I'm going to start that. Ugh. Oh, that's a little sickly. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go with that. See, the problem is if you try to darken orange or yellow with some black, you end up getting an army green. And I think we've talked about that before. So I'm going to put a little blue in with my orange. I'm going to get a little more orange. And that should give me a little darker brownish, hopefully. That's almost the color I had. But it's not too bad. You know, I'll go with it. We'll see what happens. I'll try not to go too dark at first. So not liking what I just did, I'm going to grab some of this purple and put a little of that over there. Oh, you just hid that horrible color with another color. Yes, I did. And I did that on purpose. And now I'm going to look at his eye. Because he's got bags of purple. Now there's also some grayed out areas around his eye. So technically at some point I'll be coming back there for that eye. But I'm going to do something I normally don't do. I usually save the eyeballs to last. But at this point it's probably freaking everybody out that his eyes look so ghostly. So I'm going to try the black straight up, as black can be, to fill in the areas for his eye. And I can even tell stirring it in there was not enough. This will probably take several coats of black to be as dark as it needs to be. Now his glasses are also black. And if his pupils are going to need several coats, his glasses are probably going to need several coats too. Now I don't want you to think like I'm done with the skin. I'm nowhere near done with the skin. But if I'm going to need several coats of things, and I have to have the skill to paint between colors, which is really what makes watercolor different than other paints, is other paints you can cover. You can just be like, you know, I didn't like that, I'll paint over it. Yeah, you can't do that in watercolor. You can't paint all the skin first and then come back and layer it, because everything is really kind of on the same layer. I mean, you can put shadows over the top of stuff, but you can't really put highlights over it. Not the way you think about highlights when you normally paint, because every painting media has its own little tricks. I'm pretty sure his entire glasses are all one solid color. So with that in mind, And I've hit saturation already on some of that. The other thing is you have to remember, if your paint is wet and your hand rubs against it, you're going to smear it. So there's this whole kind of thing where you try to work from the middle outwards. You can rotate your paper as you go, and that's fine. Oh, we got shaky there. Right. And you also see, like, what I'm noticing here with my paper as I'm painting is my paper, because it's drawing paper, not watercolor paper, it's starting to bow, which means it's too moist in that area. So I really should take like maybe a 10-minute break and come back to it. But I'm going to try just to keep moving on here for a little bit. Because the thought of coming back and having to start over with my filming and picking up probably makes sense. But I too am stubborn. Okay, I'm not really sure where my camera died on me last time. I'm not really sure how much longer I've got on this before it dies again because, well, battery-wise, I should have been fine. So, I had to leave this alone for a day just to let the water evaporate and do what it needed to do, because I am working on such thin paper. So now I'm going to go back, start doing some touch-ups on here, smoothing some things out, taking a relatively decent look at it. Like as I'm looking at his eye here, I'm seeing more purple. I know I had a purple mix right here on the top of my tray. Normally when I start up a new day, I start up with new colors. But I don't think I really need to do that because these colors are what I was working with yesterday. So I'm going to focus in here on this eye. Tap it a little bit here with the watercolor. And I'm just going to kind of gradually darken that. Spread that. Now, is that anywhere near what I need? No. Oh, I need a lot more. So let me mix up. I'll let that dry for a minute or so. I'll come back to this little crevice on this eye. And I'll start putting in shadows there. Now that was wetter than I liked, so I took some of it off. And that's the other thing, like I didn't even bother to get around to the eyebrows, or I didn't have time to get into the eyebrows because my battery died. And at that point, it was too wet to begin with. So let me try to put a layer or two over the top of my glasses. This is that ADHD, working all the areas at once, which is, you know, actually a good thing if you're trying to paint it on drawing paper instead of watercolor paper. Allows you to move everywhere. You do have to remember as you do this though, you're making your paper wet. So if you're making your paper wet, you can't really 100% rest your hand on it, because until it dries you will pick up the paper. Now this is actually a good time to change your brush. So I've got a flat brush here somewhere. I'm pretty sure you got a flat brush, because I give you guys flat brushes. The downside to doing this is Finn's shirt's blue. Alright, that's kind of a mistake. But I'm going to try to paint this in very fast and make it even. And that's about as much paint as that sucker's going to be able to handle today. And this one, I will start on this side as well. Now, remixing this color, yeah, you can try. Blending another color into it, probably way easier. Another color like blue. A lot of times when you're doing paint, you kind of got to get that touch where you're just barely touching the other thing. The other paint that's activated or you need to blend. It's truly a touch thing. Now I'm going to force myself to stop here. And sometimes if you really care about the work that you're doing with your paintings, you kind of gotta do a few warm-ups if you're about to do something good. Like if you know you're getting paid for something, it's not a bad idea to do a few practice pieces just to get back in the vibe of it, because paints vary so greatly in media from each other. Like watercolor, you have a different approach than if you had a acrylic or an oil paint. You know, I'll make up a few shadows here. I just come up with this wet brush, sometimes I can pick up some of that. Blend it over. Maybe I want to darken up the pit of this a little more. Okay. Soak off some of the water. A lot of times what you're not seeing is I've got a paper towel over here that I'm dabbing. Just trying to get in. Make the amount of paint that is loaded on my brush thinner. Alright, now here's a good question. I'm looking at this part of his brow and it's lighter than I have it painted. So, what I can do, and this is kind of a Hail Mary pass, I can stir that up and I can actually lift a small amount of this paint by getting it wet. Should I lift all of it? No. Is that my preferred way of doing it? No. That is not my preferred way of doing it at all. And since I've got a fairly dry black at this moment, I'll go back and see if I do a little fixing on the eyes. Because I really left them kind of jacked up yesterday. Now I'm going to go with the lighter black. Going to do the same thing, take some of the moisture off with the paper towel. Okay, so my camera crapped out on me again for reasons that are unknown. Battery seems fine. It did say that my memory chip was full. I don't think it really was, but it had gotten to that point where the paper was getting wet again, so I really either needed to hit it with a hairdryer or come back the next day. At this point, the video is getting very long, at least for my YouTube account. So I'm going to stop that there, and at least this will get you guys a step in the right direction as far as techniques and things you can do with watercolor on a drawing paper. Is there a lot of work for me left to do? Sure. Will I get back to it? Maybe. I got an oil paint I really want to do. But I love watercolors because they are like drawing, and you can sit down and maybe in an hour and get a finished painting, which is impossible to do with oil paint unless you're just making an abstract. So keep that in mind while you're working. This will go a lot quicker than a normal, 2-3 week assignment. So that's about it. If you have any questions, hit me in the email. Otherwise, have a good weekend. Remember, I'm not going to be around Monday, so that is your work day. I will see you guys on Wednesday. Bye.